Dawn breaks over the Pantanal wetlands, but a hidden horror lurks beneath the morning mist. While tracking poachers, park rangers Jack and Sarah discover a giant anaconda. What stops them in their tracks is the reptile's unnaturally swollen belly, as if it has swallowed a terrible secret. A secret that could end their lives. That morning, a thin mist hung over the Pantanal wetlands in Brazil, where Jack and Sarah, two seasoned park rangers, began their routine patrol. Jack, with 10 years rooted here, considered every tree and trail an old friend. Sarah, younger but no less dedicated, always looked at everything with boundless admiration. They were not just colleagues but kindred spirits, sharing a fierce belief in their mission to protect this wild land. They wove through the flooded trees, listening to the calls of birds. Suddenly, an unusual silence fell. Feeling something was wrong, they veered off the trail. And there, they found it, a male swamp deer lying motionless in the tall grass. Seeing it, both were stunned. The deer was not dead, but it was badly wounded, bleeding from its head. What froze Jack and Sarah was its antlers, the symbol of its strength and wildness, which had been cruelly sawed off, leaving only 2 bloody stumps. The cut was clean, cold, not made by a predator. It was the mark of a human, of cruel greed. The piece of the pantanal was shattered. The wound on the deer's head felt like a knife thrust into their hearts. Sarah knelt, her eyes welling up with tears. Jack clenched his jaw, his fist tightening. This wasn't just a harmed animal. It was a brazen challenge to rangers like them. The pain and fury turned into determination. They knew they couldn't just log the incident and return. They had to act. After placing the deer in a safe spot and giving it first aid, they began to search. The faint, blurred tracks of heavy boots led them deeper into the forest. Each of their steps carried the weight of anger and a fragile hope for justice. They didn't know that this journey would lead them to a horrifying truth, far beyond anything they could have imagined. Continuing their pursuit, Jack and Sarah followed the tracks through the wet, flooded forests, where the sounds of nature became more alien and mysterious. Their unease grew as they discovered a bizarre scene: the massive carcass of a giant anaconda. The snake, once the king of the swamp, lay strangely still. As they got closer, they felt a chilling presence. The snake's belly was unnaturally bloated, and there was a deep, clean tear in its side, as if someone had cut it open to retrieve something inside. Jack, with his years of experience, knew this was not a natural death. They both held their breath, cautiously observing. Next to the snake, they found the half-eaten body of a caiman, along with a backpack lying nearby. What on earth is going on? Sarah mumbled. The situation was absurd. Who would cut open a giant anaconda just to get a half-swallowed caiman? Fear and curiosity urged them closer to the backpack. The backpack was soaked, but its contents were surprisingly intact. Specialized cutting tools with razor-sharp blades, a modern satellite tracking device, and several small, encrypted data cards. This was definitely not the gear of amateur poachers. This was a sophisticated, organized operation. Their emotions at this point were of utter confusion. They felt like they were being drawn into a hunting game whose rules they didn't understand. The Pantanal, the land they loved, was turning into a battlefield where the darkest secrets were hiding. The incident with the dehorned deer was just the tip of the iceberg. The evidence was right in front of them, but they were still missing a crucial link to understand the whole story. Although Jack and Sarah had a few clues, a big question mark hung in their minds. What was the poacher's real goal? Who was behind all these crimes? They exchanged glances, understanding that this journey would be far more dangerous than they had imagined. With the backpack full of clues in their hands, they knew they were venturing into a dangerous adventure, where their own survival and the fate of the entire forest depended on what they would discover next. With the evidence in hand, Jack and Sarah found a safe place to examine the backpack more closely. Inside, they found a map, a list of names who seemed to be accomplices, and a small voice recorder. Their hearts pounded as Jack pressed play. All the sounds of the jungle seemed to stop, giving way to a familiar voice. That voice had once given them trust and courage. It belonged to Chief Ranger David, the man they respected and saw as a mentor and an older brother. Everything is going according to plan. The shipment of deer antlers will arrive in the Pantanal. Jack and Sarah are just a part of the distraction. Those words hit them like a hammer blow. Both of them were speechless. The pain of betrayal was even more terrifying than the fear of the poachers. David, the man who had taught them about dedication and loyalty, was the very ringleader of this game. Their entire worldview collapsed. David's advice and stories of his dedicated career now seemed like a complete lie. The respect and affection they had for him vanished, leaving only a profound sense of disappointment. In that moment, Jack and Sarah understood they couldn't return to base. Their home, the place they once felt safest, had become a trap. The enemy wasn't a phantom hiding deep in the forest, but a familiar face. With the evidence in hand, they had become the targets. Their lives were in danger. Clarity returned. The pain and confusion turned into determination. They knew what they had to do. They couldn't let David and his accomplices continue to destroy the Pantanal. They had to use this very evidence to expose him and bring him to justice.
Right here.
With David's map, they knew they had to get to the secret warehouse. The journey had changed. It was no longer just about finding justice, but about a desperate flight and a confrontation with the very person they had once trusted. With the map in hand, Jack and Sarah embarked on a desperate escape. The path to the secret warehouse was not easy. They had to cross deep, sinking swamps where every step was a gamble. Herds of caimans lurked beneath the water, waiting for their prey. Giant swarms of venomous mosquitoes clung to them, causing itching and fever. The harsh weather, alternating between scorching sun and pouring rain, tested their every bit of strength. In their pursuit, there was no room for error. David, with his deep knowledge and understanding of the forest, led a group of henchmen in a relentless hunt. The faintest footsteps and the smallest sounds could betray them. Jack and Sarah had to use every survival skill and every bit of knowledge of the forest to get by. They used dry stream beds to hide their tracks, camouflaged themselves with mud and leaves, and moved at night to avoid being seen. At times, they were on the verge of exhaustion. Their food ran out, and clean water became scarce. The strength of their will was the only thing that kept them going. They weren't just fighting for their lives, but also for their promise to protect the Pantanal. The fear of being caught, of the evidence being destroyed, gave them new strength. As they got closer to the warehouse, they knew the fight was inevitable. A sound echoed from behind, and a thrilling chase began. They couldn't run forever. It was time to face them. Jack and Sarah hid behind a rock, seeing David leading the poaching group. Their eyes met, full of hatred. They were forced to fight, not with weapons, but with their intelligence and courage. They had to trick the poachers, find a way to escape with the evidence, and send out a distress signal. This was the decisive moment where all their efforts and sacrifices would be rewarded, or everything would end forever. After a breathless chase, Jack and Sarah found an escape route. By using a secret trail, they evaded the poachers' encirclement and found an old, abandoned communication station. The radio was dusty and rusty, but a glimmer of hope remained. A single, flickering light on a dusty emergency radio. With time running out, they frantically connected the wires, their hands trembling from exhaustion.
Almost there.
They transmitted the evidence, the map, the list, and, most importantly, the chilling audio recording of David's voice. The signal was weak, but it got through. In the stillness of the night, a new sound emerged in the distance, the muffled whir of helicopters. Authorities, acting on their emergency call, carried out a surprise raid. The entire poaching ring was dismantled in a swift, coordinated operation. David and his accomplices were caught red-handed. David's eyes were full of confusion and rage when he saw Jack and Sarah. He couldn't believe that the very people he had betrayed were the ones who brought him to justice. A day later, Jack and Sarah stood on the banks of the swamp, quietly watching the sunrise. The early sun spread its gentle, golden light over the winding rivers and vast wetlands, illuminating the plants and the birds that were waking up. The battle was over. Although the emotional wounds were still there, they knew that justice had been served. The Pantanal returned to its pristine beauty, but this time, it was protected by silent heroes. Jack and Sarah had done the impossible. They had held on to their faith, overcome betrayal, and fought to the very end for the land they loved. The image of them standing together, watching the sun rise over the swamp, is a symbol of resilience and courage. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope and truth will always prevail.